Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to talk about interfaces. So there's a lot to say about interfaces, and we're just going to get started here on this lecture. I'm going to start by creating a new class, and I'm going to call it computer. I'm going to create another class, and this class will be called vehicle. I'm going to give computer a method. For example, let's say computer class has a public void start method. So here I'm trying to make a minimal scenario to demonstrate interfaces usage. I'm gonna add a sysout statement. Sysout control space. Here I'm gonna say computer started. And to make it more realistic, I'm gonna give computer a private field. Let's say private int serial number equals to, I'm just gonna give it a random number, and I'm gonna go to the vehicle class, and I'm gonna give vehicle a method, a field, and in addition I'm gonna add the constructor as well. So let's say vehicle has public void drive, for example, and let's give it a simple sysout statement. Let's say driving the vehicle, and I'm gonna add a field, a private field, private string type, and I'm gonna add the constructor as well by right-clicking in the class right here and going to source, generate constructor using fields. Make sure to check the fields that you want to use. So here it is generated a super statement which calls the superclass constructor, but we won't use it in this example, so we're gonna get rid of it. And of course we can use the classes we've created, so we're gonna go in our application class and say computer, for example computer1 equals new computer, and here I'm gonna call the method from the computer class, which is start. However, the other methods are from the object class, which is the parent of our classes. So here I'm gonna call the start method, which is a method I defined for the computer class, and I'm gonna create another instance of vehicle class. Let's say vehicle1 equals new vehicle, and vehicle has this constructor which you have to pass in the type which I've just defined in the vehicle class. So let's say the type of the vehicle is a car, and here I'm gonna say vehicle1 dot drive, for example. Let's add the semicolon in here. So the point right here is that computer and vehicle are two completely different arbitrary objects which has nothing in common. So for some reason I've decided that computer and vehicle has nothing to do with each other. They're not the same kind of thing. They don't have a common parent class or anything like that, but I've decided that they should both have the same method, that is display information. So in this case, Java gives me the mechanism to formalize that. And that's a case where you can use interfaces for. Therefore, to create a new interface, I'm gonna go on my project that I'm working on and I'm gonna click new. But instead of creating a new class, now I'm gonna create a new interface. And creating an interface is pretty much the same as creating a new class. All I should do is give it a name with an uppercase letter, for example, information, and click finish. And in our interface, I'm gonna create our method, public void display information. And I'm not going to pass any parameters to this method, even thought I could do. And what's more important, I'm not going to add a body to the method, so there won't be any curly braces. So I defined my display information method, and now what I can do with it is go to the computer class and say right here, computer implements information. And if I do this without doing anything else, I'm gonna get an error, which says that the type computer must implement their inherited abstract method display information, which means we have to add unimplemented methods, which we could type by hand as well, of course. And here we have our overridden method. This annotation override is just to make sure that this method is actually overridden from our information interface. It is optional, we're just gonna delete it in this case, and we're gonna delete this comment as well. So basically what implements information does is it forces us to implement each abstract method that is in our interface. Each method header that is in this interface must be implemented in our computer class. In this case, we only have display information, so we have implemented that. And here I'm going to add a body. Let's make this display information do something. Here I'm going to say sysout, control space. Let's say computer serial number is plus serial number. And we can do the same with vehicle as well. We can say vehicle implements information. And we're going to add the unimplemented methods. Let's take rid of this comment, and here I'm gonna say vehicle type is, and let's just output the type here, and I'm gonna leave the override annotation there. As I said, it is optional, so it's your choice whether you want to leave it or not. So an interface is kind of a textual contract where you have the interface with any number of methods with different parameters, different return types. And when you say, for example, implement specific interface, you actually have to implement all those methods that you have specified on that particular interface. And you can implement any number of interfaces that you want, and you have to separate them with a comma. So here you can add another interface, which you first have to define it, of course. And in addition to implements keyword, you can also extend another class, as you have seen in previous lectures. So you can have extend, let's say, computer, and implements information or any other interface as well. Don't forget that the class can only extend one class, whereas it can implement any number of interfaces. And whenever you have a class, you can use an interface instead, with one exception. You cannot use the name of an interface where you have the new keyword. So you cannot instantiate interfaces. Other than that, you can have, for example, here the name of an interface, or anywhere else where you'd expect a class's name. And let's see an example of that. For example, here I can say information info equals new computer. And the reason that I can do this is that computer implements information. And here I can call the method I've defined in the interface. Like display information. And another thing I can do is information info1 equals vehicle1. And the reason I'm allowed to do this is that vehicle1 is a variable that points to an object which is of vehicle class. And vehicle class again implements information interface. And what I'm saying here, in other words, would be make info1 variable point at whatever vehicle1 is pointing at, which is a object of vehicle type. And here I'm gonna say info1 display information. And now we're gonna run this. And this last one is showing the vehicle type, which we've specified right here in this vehicle constructor. And another example where you can use interfaces is, for example, I'll show it right here. Let's make another method. I'm gonna say private static void. Let's say show information. And as a parameter, I'm gonna pass in the interface that we've created, which is information. And I'm gonna give it a name, let's say info. And here I'm gonna say info.display information. I'm doing this because at the moment we only have this method, but of course you could add any number of methods as you'd like. And now I'm gonna call this method show information, and I can pass in any object that implements information interface. We can say here computer1, or we can say show information vehicle1, which outputs the same information as these two. To make it more clear, I'm gonna add here a blank sysout statement, and I'm gonna run it. And as you can see, here pops up again the computer serial number and vehicle type. So we're producing these lines by calling this show information method and passing in different objects from different classes. So this is it for this lecture. We're going to use interfaces again when we're going to explain the Java collections. You're going to see other examples where you're going to use interfaces, but for now you have this code in the resources section to practice on your own, and I'll see you in the next lecture.